Okay, this is our second homework video for Chapter 15, and we're going to begin by working on Exercise 15.3. This is on page 621. Now, we're going to borrow from some of the techniques that we've been using, so you're going to see a little bit of repeat, and that's quite all right. So really, our focus here is going to be more on the event handler and how to maneuver things around than it is maybe as much on structuring things. Now you might need a little help with that too, so that's fine. But let's go ahead and start a new Java project, and let's call this exercise 15.3. I'm just going to copy that so I don't have to type it again. Alright, looks good. And now that we're here, let's go ahead and make a new class file. Default package is fine. We're going to name it exercise 15.3. Yes, public static void main. And go ahead and click finish. Let's begin by, not in caps though, extends application. Override. Then this little thing here is basically telling us that we need to have that start method in here. So we're going to do public void start our stage. Call it primary stage. That's fine. Whatever really you want to call it is up to you. Alright, and then we need to think about how we're going to structure things first. So if I'm reading this correctly, we need to have a ball in a pane. It says you should define a pane class for displaying the ball and provide methods for moving the ball left, right, up, and down. So we know that we're going to be creating 4 methods. We also know that we're going to need a pane to put the circle in, and we need the circle, and then obviously we're going to need the buttons. So hopefully you're seeing a little bit of a repeat here. Let's go ahead and let's begin by creating a pane to put the circle in. So we can just call it pane. It's going to be a new pane. That's really all we need. Then we're going to need a circle. That's going to be a new circle. Now, we did a little bit of experimenting in class, but basically when you are working with this, it is going to need to a couple different parameters. So what those parameters are is going to depend. Now we're going to need an X and Y position, and then we're also going to need a radius. So what we did in class is we chose the position 40, 50. Those are X and Y, and then we chose a radius of 20. Now we are getting some underlines here, so let's go ahead and see if we can just resolve a few of these right away. Shapes in there. That takes care of that. We also need to get this in there. Did not need it to do that. And it looks like everything is no longer being underlined. Good. Alright, now let's set up some components of the circle. Let's set up the fill color. You can do whatever color you want. I think today I'm thinking red. And let's also set a stroke color. let's finally add that to the pane. Do it, get children, empty parens, and then we'll just do add circle. Okay. And then actually, at this point, we should be able to see that on the screen. So I don't know if you're in the habit of doing that, but quite often when I'm working on applications, sometimes I'll just bring stuff up on screen just to make sure it's working. So let's just go ahead and do that and see what it creates. Oh, it says it got some errors. And what those errors are, I'm not really quite sure yet. Let's see if we can figure it out. Oh, one of them. Okay, so we need to get the colors in there. That's all right. So now that that's in there, it should take care of just one underline. All right, two underlines. Save it again. Let's run it. Okay, and you see it's not quite working yet. Now I'm realizing why that is, because we need to actually be able to show those things, right? So I'm just copying from one of my other applications here, and that's going to go near the bottom of my start section. Once again, I'm saving it, and now we have that up on the screen. So you can see that's working. That's a pretty strong color red, but that's okay. Alright, so now we have a couple other things that we need to do. We're going to need to create our buttons, and the buttons once again will go in an HBox, and that's the kind of thing that we were doing in the previous example. So let's just follow suit. We'll do HBox. Let's throw the library in right away. H. New HBox. Do not want parens around the whole thing. And then we're going to create some buttons here. And here's where you want to be careful. Last time I just pressed enter, and really I want this library because that matches up with the JavaFX things. So let's go ahead and create a button left. That's going to be new button. Text, of course, will be left. And since we're going to be doing a little repetition here, right, because we're going to need right, left, right, up, down, okay, just matching up all the names. The other thing I'm going to do is just basically a little housekeeping here. So we'll do a little HBox set alignment, and that's really just to get things looking okay. I mean, why not have it centered, right? And sometimes, you know, I do this so quickly. Just want to make sure the libraries are in place. Also, let's do the HBox get children, and then we're going to do add all, and I'm going to do VT left, VT right, VT up, down, provided I can type it right. In addition, I'm going to need to make sure I have the border pane here to put everything into, because ultimately that's what I'm going to do. So doing that, I need to keep in mind that I'm also going to need to change this to whatever I call my border pane. So let's go ahead and create a border pane. Actually, let's get the libraries in there right away so we don't forget. And I'm just going to call this one B pane for border pane. It's going to be a new border pane. Don't need anything in there. And then, as we did in our previous examples, I'm going to kind of borrow these, but I'm going to actually change the syntax a little bit. It'll save me a little bit of typing now. Well, the one thing I need to do is make sure it's B pane. What are we going to... Well, let's see. Our circle is sitting in pane. So let's put that, it's going to go up at the top. Oops. So we'll just do pane. And then at the bottom is going to be the H box with the buttons. So that's going to be H box. And then we're going to set the alignment of that H box to position top center of that bottom area. Okay, and I'm actually going to do a save. I don't see any underlines. I'm going to launch the application again. I just want to look at how it looks, and you can see that I am throwing an error. So let's see if we can find where that error is coming from. Alright, and didn't I say before that I'm going to have to make sure I change this part to match up with what I called things. So instead of just pane, it's going to be B pane. And then I'm also thinking that I probably want to set the size of the screen. Now, after doing a little bit of experimentation, I think that we came up with some numbers, and maybe they were bigger than that. Let's make it 300 and 160 for our X and Y. I'll probably want to change the name here as well. So title, set scene, and show. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save. That should take care of the mistake, because now it is at least going to find border pane. Okay, and there it is. Now right now these buttons don't do anything because we haven't assigned them to, but hopefully we will. And I'm thinking I might make this window just a little bit taller. Maybe I'll make this like 250 so it's a little more squarish. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so now we have the ball starting out there. I could actually change the position of the ball. So if I wanted to say like 100 and 150, let's see what that will look like. Okay, and that 150 might be a little excessive, maybe 100, and then make this one 150, just so it starts out slightly more centered. And you know, I'm not concerned about it being perfect, but there it is in the middle. Okay, so that's our setup. Now we just need to make the buttons do something, and that's really kind of what this chapter is all about. It's all about event handlers. So if you think about what we're going to need to do, and I'm going to add these methods now below our stage declaration. So I'm going to need to have methods that are going to react to button left, and we know from our experience already that we're going to need to do a set on action, and then we will also have our little event handler. then that's going to be doing something. Now this is also going to be replicated 4 times, so we may as well just do that right away. And then we have the setup for each of them. I'll paste them and then clean them up. Alright, so let's tab that in. Okay, and then let's change the names right away so they match up with what we have above. So we got a button right, we got a button up, and a button down. Alright, now we need to figure out how we're going to take that circle and move it. Now, some of these built-in methods for handling circles you might not know off the top of your head, but you should be able to look at some of the examples from the book and pick up some tips. And that's most likely where I think you should be getting stuck on this stuff, if you seem to understand the rest. But what I'm doing right now is thinking about if I'm going to move a circle left or right, and in this case it's going to be left, I am thinking about moving things on the x-axis. So remember that x goes across and y goes up and down. So I want to change the center of the circle's x position. Alright, so that's going to require some parameters, and some of the parameters it's going to require, and I'm noticing we're also missing a library here. Okay, it's just giving me the syntax for it. That's going to require that we figure out where the circle is to begin with, so we have to do this method to do that. Right, so before we can adjust x, we need to know where x is. And we also need to make the determination of if we're going to move it, and what happens if that position is touching up against the edge of the screen. So, for example, if I were to bring that example up on the screen, and the ball is in the middle, and that ball is touching, or the center of that ball is at the left edge, and that x position is 0, I really shouldn't be able to take it farther left. I should have some sort of a limit, and getting the ball halfway past the edge is about as far as I want to go with it. So I'm actually going to qualify this and say if that position is greater than 0, and then we're going to use this new cool modern syntax. So let me type this all out, and then I'll explain what my thoughts are here. Okay, and let me give you my talk through of this. Alright, so I explain what this part does, and really what we're doing here when we see this question mark and then we see this colon, this is kind of this new conditional statement approach that really is the equivalent of, we're checking this condition. If it's true, we do this. If it's not true, we do this. So this is kind of like the if this is true, then we do this, else we do that. So that's syntax, and you're going to see this syntax being used in JavaScript and jQuery and other similar languages like that, and it's cool that they have it in Java because it really creates a much more simple and elegant way of doing some of this stuff. So we're going to check to see if it's up against the side of the screen. If it is not, in other words, if the center of that is greater than 0, then we are going to actually allow it to move 2 pixels to the left. So we're going to subtract 2 from x, keeping in mind that the left edge of the screen is 0. So if it's not at 0, then we can move a couple over. Otherwise, if it is at 0, we don't move at all. We're not going to allow it to move. So just with that bit alone, we can do a little bit of a test. So let's go ahead and save this and give it a run. There's our circle, and let's see if left is working. And yes, it is. Right? Not so bad, right? So now to move right, as you might imagine, we're going to do almost the same thing, but in an opposite direction. So let's put that there. Clean up this code while I'm at it. So once again, we're going to look at the center. And then instead of checking against 0, unless we know specifically what the right edge is widthwise, we can hard code a number. So instead of saying greater than 0, we'd say less than whatever. But since we might not know the size of the window, especially if the user grabs it and resizes it, because that's the case, right? It's possible. We are actually going to subtract it from the screen width, and this is how we figure out that screen width. So we're going to say that if the x is less than whatever the screen width is, then we can move it, and the amount that we're going to move it isn't going to be -2. We're going to be adding to the x-axis. Otherwise, we do nothing. Saving it again. Let's test it. The left works, and now right works. Okay. Let's try this up now. So as you might surmise, instead of checking for x now, we're going to be checking y. And we're going to be getting the center at position y. And once again, since we're working from the top in this case, where we do know where the 0 point is, we can say greater than 0. And otherwise, we can move it up if we need to. All right. See, once you get the syntax and get the concept, then it actually accelerates quite a bit. So here, you might anticipate this as well, that this is going to flip around. Instead of get screen width, we're going to get screen height. And here the -2 is going to change to a +2. And that should really do it. That's going to be all of it. So you can leave all 4 of these methods up on the screen for you so you can see them in their entirety. But those are the 4 that do the work. Part of it is the beautiful simplicity of using this little lambda statement, which I just love, and getting the syntax correct, understanding these conditional statements and how they work, basically if else. I like those quite a bit too. Very modern, lightweight approach. You can see we can go up, we can go down, we can go right, and we can go left. And that's all there is to it. Okay, so that wraps up exercise 15-3.